Always.
Yeah.
It's still good.
Yoshi. Yoshi. It's low.
I feel like you've been gone forever too. How was your trip? You look like you guys had a lot of fun.
We had a lot of fun.
We're gonna check your card.
Yeah, I think we know our.
Is that going fast enough?
The majority of it. I have two now. We have a little boy and a little girl. How perfect. How perfect. Yeah. They live in our neighborhood. See, it's great. I know. Yeah. We're very happy. So we can just see them, every other day or so. See them, take a break, see them. We are. And then, our daughter-in-law, mom also lives in our neighborhood.
I think you should.
Yeah.
Do you want to start the recording time?
It's already started.
Oh, it started.
I did the math and I checked with my doctor and.
Good morning, everybody. We're going to get started. So let's prepare our hearts for our service today. Please turn off mute your cell phones. And we're starting the recording on our service.
Yeah.
Welcome to the United Church of the Valley. As a progressive Christian community, we believe that following the path and teachings of Jesus can lead to an experience of the sacred and the oneness and unity of all life. We also affirm that the teachings of Jesus provide but one of many paths to experience the sacred. We can draw from diverse sources of wisdom on our spiritual journey. So wherever you are on your journey, you are welcome here. We know that the way we behave towards one another is the fullest expression of what we believe. So welcome to you who are here in the building, and welcome to you who are joining us online. Let's say the opening prayer together. God, we come into your presence this morning with a busy schedule crowded our lives. Our souls need to be fed, and yet we seem powerless to find nurture and open our ears, our eyes, and our hearts this day to hear your words of hope and healing for us. Amen. There are people in need whom we encounter each day. How shall we care for them? Their need is so great. What gifts do you have? We have so little. Our energy, our love, our willingness to serve. Those are not little gifts. With those gifts, mighty work can be done. You have worked miracles in our lives. Now you are being sent as those who bring the good news to people in need. We place our trust in God's presence.
It is well.
Where are we gonna go?
Sure, you might go where?
I lost page 51. Where did you My sin, oh my joy, of this glorious time. My sin, my
Thank you so much, Jerry and Payne. That was beautiful. Today's scripture is from John 6, verses 1 through 21. Get ready for story time. After this, Jesus went to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, also called the Sea of Tiberias. A large crowd kept following him because they saw the signs that he was doing for the sick. Jesus went up the mountain and sat down there with his disciples. Now the Passover, the festival of the Jews, was near. When he looked up and saw a large crowd coming toward him, Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread for these people to eat?" He said this to test him, for he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 6 months' wages would not buy enough bread for each of them to get a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what are they among so many people?" Jesus said, "Make the people sit down." Now there was a great deal of grass in the place, so they sat down, about 5,000 in all. Then Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated. So also the fish, as much as they wanted. And when they were satisfied, he told his disciples, "Gather up the fragments left over, so that nothing may be lost." So they gathered them up, and from the fragments of the 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten, they filled 12 baskets. When the people saw the sign that he had done, they began to say, "This is indeed the prophet who is come into the world." When Jesus realized that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, he withdrew again to the mountain by himself. When evening came, his disciples went down to the sea, got into a boat, and started across the sea to Capernaum. It was now dark, and Jesus had not yet come to them. The sea became rough because a strong wind was blowing. When they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea and coming near the boat, and they were terrified. But he said to them, "It is I, do not be afraid." Then they wanted to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached the land toward which they were going.
Good morning, everyone. Today's lectionary gospel passage probably sounds quite familiar to most of us. John's version of feeding the 5,000 and Jesus walking on the water are a couple of those miracle stories that are also found in other gospel accounts, albeit reflecting the literary flair of their respective authors. They are also among the favored New Testament stories of every Sunday school curriculum writer out there. So chances are we've been familiar with these stories for a long time. It is for this very reason that I will give only the briefest recap this morning. Now, back when I taught kids to write, one of the first things I would go over with them was what was known as the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, and why. I had colorful posters up in our classroom space, reminding my young charges that these were the questions that every good writer needed to answer in their pieces. Thankfully, the beloved disciple follows this advice in the Gospel of John. So here we go. Who? Jesus. What? Performs a couple of miracles, specifically feeding a large crowd with only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes, and then later, Jesus walking atop the stormy sea, and the storm ceasing immediately after Jesus speaks, and the boatload of disciples is suddenly transported to shore. When? In the spring, near the Passover, sometime between the year 30 and 36 of the Common Era. Where? The shores and sea of Galilee near Capernaum. See, I told you I'd be brief. Of course, I left off the final W. Why? Because I won't be quite so brief about this. There are many layers to today's reading, like all the miracle stories, but I'd like to try and peel back those proverbial onion skins with you so that perhaps we can discover together the core principles that will tell us why. Some would say that the purpose of these miracles was to act as a sign, some sort of cosmic proof that Jesus was who he said he was. But Jesus never did make any grandiose claims as to who he was. Instead, he pointed to the one who sent him. Okay, so maybe the miracles were meant to show the power of God. Indeed, possibly. And yet this tends to somehow leave more doubt than certainty. Miracles also tend to obscure the truly miraculous. Things like the fact that thousands of people followed Jesus around because he offered hope and healing, or that his mere presence could not only calm storms, but frightened, anxious men as well. Trust me when I tell you that after living in tornado-prone Mississippi for the past several years, I feel quite an affinity with those disciples on that stormy sea. The miracle is not that my house hasn't been violently blown into the next county, but those few and rare times when I've been able to remain calm, even as the tornado sirens wailed around me. These are some of the times I have felt most surrounded by divine love. So while some may see such extraordinary acts as signs and proofs, I don't believe this is the answer to our why. Instead, only a byproduct for some folk. I've also heard the idea that feeding the masses and even calming the storms were used as ancient tools for evangelism. Some even use these type of tools for modern evangelism as well. I remember back when I was in my early 20s, my wife and I were young and curious. We wanted to experience everything. We realized that neither of us had ever eaten in a soup kitchen, and so it became our mission to do just that. After some research and phone calls, this was all pre-Google, we found a church a couple of towns over that hosted a free community dinner every Thursday night. It was open to everyone, and it sounded like just the perfect thing to quell our thirst for adventure. When we arrived at the church, we were met by a group of people who were, let's say, obviously passionate about their beliefs. They led us past the large banquet hall with the long tables covered in paper tablecloths, down the hallway and past the kitchen bustling with cooks and filled to overflowing with the aroma of garlic and basil. They opened the double wooden doors to the chapel. Inside, my wife and I took seats next to the other hungry patrons, some of them not smelling nearly as good as the kitchen did. We quickly learned that before dinner, we would have to listen to a not so short sermon. It all felt a little like those vacations that you won at the swanky timeshares, as long as you endure their high pressure sales pitch first. We ourselves never returned for a second free dinner, but by looking around, it was obvious that many of our fellow diners came week after week. It was also obvious that they had tuned out the words coming from the pulpit long ago. My friends, if ever I start offering to take you all out to lunch, if only you come to church for my sermon, do not ever allow me in your pulpit again. Anyway, indeed, just a page turn away from this week's reading, John's Gospel says this about Jesus's interaction with the crowd the following day. Jesus answered them, "Very truly, I tell you, you are looking for me not because you saw signs, but because you ate your fill of the loaves. Do not work for the food that perishes, but for the food that endures for eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. For it is on him that God the Father has set his seal." Then they said to him, "What must we do to perform the works of God?" Jesus answered them, "This is the work of God, that you believe in him whom he has sent." So they said to him, "What sign are you going to give us so that we may see it and believe you? What works are you performing? Our ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness. As it is written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat." Then Jesus said to them, "Very truly, I tell you, it was not Moses who gave you the bread from heaven, but it is my Father who gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is that which comes down from heaven and gives life to the world." They said to him, "Sir, give us this bread always." For the bread of God is that which comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. And here, folks, is where I believe we finally get to the why, where after peeling away those many theological, allegorical, and magical layers, we get to the crux of the matter. These Jesus stories, indeed, all Jesus stories, were merely designed to reflect the work of God, that which gives life to the world. Things like the goodness of a little boy who freely gives up his lunch when asked to help feed others. Things like being a calming presence in the life of friends who are worried and anxious about their immediate situation or possible future. This is our model for ministry, to simply reflect the work of God by creating space for the things that give life to the world without any other motive or agenda. This is how we love God and love our neighbor as ourselves. Yes, we've all heard these stories before, and there are 1,000 different ways to spin them. But I love the way Elizabeth Barrett Browning's famous quote from the 7th book of her epic poem, Aurora Leigh, relates for me. She pens, "Earth's crammed with heaven, and every common bush afire with God. But only he who sees takes off his shoes. The rest sit round it and pluck blackberries." May we all reflect just how crammed Earth is. Amen.
See that?
At the United Church of the Valley, we seek to be inclusive of all people. We strive for peace and justice. We strive to protect and restore the integrity of the earth. We commit to a path of lifelong learning, compassion, and love. We invite you to be part of this mission, and we thank you for your generosity. There's a collection plate for those who are here in person, and of course, all of us can make a donation by going to our website, ucvchurch.org, where you can use either Venmo or PayPal.
You want to say something about backpacks?
We are still collecting funds to fill 25 backpacks that we have that we're going to be donating to foster youth in our area. We have the backpacks, we have them partially filled, but if you'd like to participate in that ministry, we will be blessing those backpacks on August 8th. So donations, if you could have them in maybe by next week, and then we can purchase the supplies on sale to stretch our funds as much as possible. And then we'll be blessing those all together as a community.
been here before. So we're gonna try something new for the next few weeks and see how it works. Instead of having the announcements and stuff, as you can see, if you were here early, the announcements were on the screens beforehand. So thank you to the Eddie crew for helping set that up. And then later we'll cover the joys and concerns. So if any of you have a joy concern that comes up late, feel free to speak to the leader directly if they need to have something happen. One joy we have is many thanks to Joanne Skinner for the beautiful artificial plant next to the welcome table in the kids' corner, which is right over here. She is unable to join us for the dedication, so she wanted to send something to remind us of her. So thank you very much. This one shocks me. Happy birthday to Ruth and Rose Dunlap, who turned 20. I just I still remember them this day. I realize I just ate myself. Concern Donna, as you know, has been admitted to the hospital in Moreno Valley. She said because her iris.
She's home.
Oh, she is home. Thank you.
She's here with us.
Oh, cool. Okay, I didn't realize she. Oh, hi, Donna. Yay. And then sadly, I have news that Ann Crutchfield, our longtime member, I believe she was a charter member. She passed away on July 17th. And at her request, there will be no services. But for those of us who remember her, she was a remarkable person in every way. So, thank you.
The prayer Jesus taught his disciples, sometimes called the Lord's Prayer or the Our Father, is in the Gospel 2 times. A long version is in Matthew with the Sermon on the Mount, and a shorter version is in Luke. Let us pray together in one voice, the common version that connects us to our grandparents and great-grandparents. And then let us pray another version that speaks to many of our longings and understandings today. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. Save us from our time of trial, and deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Our Mother, who is in heaven and within us, we call upon your names. Your wisdom come, your will be done in all the spaces in which you dwell. Give us each day sustenance and perseverance. Remind us of our limits as we give grace to the limits of others. Separate us from the temptation of empire, but deliver us into your community. For you are the dwelling place within us, the empowerment around us, and the celebration among us, now and forever.
So now is the time. I would encourage everybody on Zoom to go ahead and gather your communion elements, a little something to eat, a little something to drink. If anybody didn't bring their own into church today, they're now being passed out. After we all have our elements, they will be blessed and eaten together. Now is the time that week after week, we get to remember that which brings life to the world, the work of God. This is the time that we're able to reflect back. And just like the Our Father and Our Mother prayers that we just prayed, we're connected not only with 2,000 plus years of ancestors, but we're connected to each other and indeed the entire global Christian faith.
Jen, are we going to give instruction to break bread and?
Yes, are we done passing? Sorry. So Jesus took the bread off that silver table. He held it up, he blessed it, and he broke it, and he said, "Eat, remember." Let us eat together. He then picked up a glass of wine off the table, lifted it up, he blessed it, he took a drink and he passed it around and he said, "Drink, remember." Let us drink together. And now, let us pray. Spirit of abundant love, thank you again for giving us that which brings life to the world so that we may do the work of God. Amen. And as my benediction for you this morning, I turn to another of this week's lectionary readings, this time from the Message Bible. Hear these words from the 3rd chapter of Ephesians, verses 14 through 21. My response is to get down on my knees before the Father, this magnificent Father who parcels out all heaven and earth. I ask him to strengthen you by his Spirit, not a brute strength, but a glorious inner strength that Christ will live in you as you open the door and invite him in. I ask him that with both feet planted firmly on love, you'll be able to take in with all followers of Jesus the extravagant dimensions of Christ's love. Reach out and experience the breadth. Test its length. Plumb the depths. Rise to the heights. Live full lives. Live in the fullness of God. God can do anything, you know, far more than you could ever imagine or guess or request in your wildest dreams. He does it not by pushing us around, but by working within us, his Spirit deeply and gently within us. Amen.
Well, amen.
Oh, you did it.
Do you want to stop the recording? Thank you so much, Jen. That was great. Hi, Edna. Hi, Steve.
You're welcome. Carrie, we're gonna have to figure out a like a secret sign when
Yeah.
it's done being